Saturday and we're together. I have my ear pods on because I haven't figured out how to mic this properly. And I'm on it. I'm on it. I have Sound Guy Tony coming Tuesday so that I want to always make sure that the sound quality is good as it was on KFI. I'm wearing a very special Christmas gift. It was an orchid that was given to me by a woman that's on our 330 group on Facebook. Her name is Almost London. We call her, that's what we call her. Her name is Elena. And I got this, and it's very precious to me. And I wore it because I am superstitious. And, you know, I explain being faith-based and superstitious this way to my friends, which is, in a weird way, religion is just a vetted superstition. You know, it comes with papers and certification and verification, and superstitions, shrug, but people have them. And I consider, you know, religion, faith-based, whether you're a churchgoer or just a spiritual person, I consider that your insurance, your big insurance, like, you know, Blue Cross Blue Shield, or you're in good hands with Allstate. I'm a farmer's girl myself. But that being said, I consider being superstitious my gap insurance. It's that little extra, you know, that little that'll cover me, you know, in case you wreck your car and you're upside down. You want that gap coverage. So I am superstitious, and I just, and I'm superstitious in a positive way, not in a negative. I don't have any negative superstition. No broken mirrors, no black cats, no, you know, whistling under a piano or whatever. But good superstition. And I'm saying that because, you know, we started out last week. It was only January 2nd. And we were like, it feels different. It's a new year. This is exciting. And then last week was, I'm not one to use curse words in public, but I think the only thing that I can say is shit show. You know, I said it quickly, so you could say maybe I was saying the name of a small dog. My friend had a dog called a Shih Tzu. So, you know, this was the Shih Tzu show. And, you know, one of the things that I'm really proud and grateful for is that people trust me. I'm not exactly Walter Cronkite, but I am trusted and evidently somewhat respected and on occasion admired. So pretty much this week has been a week of a lot of contact with a lot of people. And the beauty of it is because, you know, my home is my sanctuary. By the way, anybody who knows me personally or has been to my home or has had a phone conversation knows that on top of superstition, I do believe in energy and, you know, vibes. So my home is a sanctuary. I don't allow negativity. I don't allow gossip. I mean, now I'm all alone, so it's very easy to keep it nice. But when I have other people visiting me, if they're saying something negative or lower vibration, or they're on a phone call having a conversation about things that I don't care for, I tell them to go out on the balcony, that it's the equivalent of cigarette smoke, that I don't want that in my home. So I actually have friends that I've barely spoken to. I'm not even kidding, since 4 years ago, because, you know, I have all manner of friends from all walks of life with all kinds of beliefs, and nobody's going to tell me that that's not okay. That if someone doesn't think like me or believe like me, line up behind my thoughts and, you know, superstitions, that they're not good people. There's all varieties of goodness. That's what makes this country amazing. There are all kinds of goodnesses. And I'm grateful that I think of life, you know, I use the supermarket analogy. Or if you want to go biblical, you know, the Bible says to mine the gold. There are people that there's a lot of them that's, you know, rocks, but they have gold and they're still in my life. So that being said, my friends on both sides that were upset 4 years ago, that were, you know, you have to decry this or hate that or not be friends with that person. I remember telling several of my friends, you get 3 minutes a day of negativity, 3. So pick your topics. What do you want to bitch about today? your ex-husband, the president, whatever it is, you got 3 minutes. And then I look at my clock. I literally look at a clock and go, time's up. Now we have to talk about happy things, good things, positive things, forward moving things. So I had a lot of time's up conversations. And I remember I was on the radio in Indianapolis I'm going to tell you when it was, in 2004. I was on the radio in Indianapolis, Indiana on WENS, Real 97.1, Real Life, Real Music. And I didn't know what I was doing in the most spectacular way, like a bumblebee barely knowing that it can fly. It's not really terribly aerodynamic. Obviously it is, or it wouldn't fly. But there are, those people that believe that bumblebees don't know they can't fly, so they do, because technically their body's heavier than their wings can handle. But I think we just didn't have ways of truly measuring because, duh, it's flying. But exactly. I thought I didn't know how to fly, but evidently I was flying very well. And I had a conversation on the air about reality television because, believe it or not, when I was a little girl, it was the beginning, but it was more about tricks. Anybody that wants to know the history, it was tricks. Go back. I don't even know if it's on YouTube. There was a show called Candid Camera. And then they would do these terrible things to people, these hilarious pranks. And then this guy would walk out and say, I'm Alan Funt. Okay, now how many of you, your mind's blown that I'm not looking at anything? Because I think about what I want to say and then I put it away and let it marinate, sort of like proving bread in a drawer. I'm going to be using a lot of cooking analogy because my mother and my mother's visiting, have been binge watching the Great British Bake Off. I'm a little obsessed with cooking and baking now. I've had a kitchen full of dirty dishes most of the week, and not because I don't wash them in between, but because I've been trying all manner of recipes. But that being said, I prepare the show like I'm baking you something delicious. I put it all together and then I put it in a drawer and I let it prove. So there you are, Alan Funt, without looking at notes. I bet that brought back a lot of happy, good memories from a lot of childhoods. Who didn't love Candid Camera? Who didn't love when the person found out they'd been totally pranked and it was like, I'm Alan Funt. And then the person would go, of course, there's a reason why the treadmill keeps, smile, you're on Candid Camera. There's a reason the treadmill keeps speeding up, or duh. There were some really great episodes of Candid Camera. And we had Punked, we had the Ali G show where some of it was real and some of it was fake. And then we started with this other kind of reality show. We started with, Paris Hilton and her little friend Nicole Richie, The Simple Life, where it was like two sort of celebby Debbie girls, milking cows and whatnot. And you feel old, Rob. That's okay. And these celebby girls, so they called them celebutantes. There was an actual name for celebutantes. And I sort of saw something brewing in our country back then. I saw a sort of fantasy, this fantastical vision of, The Bachelor. And, The Bachelor was big even before, in the early 2000s. And I had a friend, Amy, who's a brilliant award-winning journalist I've mentioned on this show before. And she wouldn't miss an episode of The Bachelor, and this is an educated woman who thought that show was the kitten's pajamas. And to me, the thought of, I forget how many girls, I've never watched the show all the way through. I've watched snippets of it at other people's houses. For the record, I can look this camera like that and say, have I watched Pawn Stars? Sure. But that's a different kind. That's like, I watch that because I like to learn the history of, arrowheads and musical instruments. I actually like Pawn Stars. I find it pretty educational from time to time. But I've not seen a single frame of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. If I saw something in peripheral vision in a gym, like, are you going to hold that against me? But like literally peripheral vision in a gym. because I vote with my feet. It's the same reason I don't watch horror movies, because once something's in your head, I can count on the fingers of one hand horror movies, and the reasons why, because they were classics. The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, The Omen, The Shining. I really can't think of any other horror. Oh, Hitchcock, The Birds of Hitchcock. But other than that, I've never seen a Chucky, a Scream, a Halloween, a Jason, a Saw, a none, zero, zip. Never saw any of them. Because once you get something in your brain, it's hard to get out. And it's a little bit like a diet. It's a little bit like once you start eating a certain kind of food, plaque builds up in your arteries or in your intestines. I've been on sort of a, junk superstition diet, meaning, yes, I have pure and happy superstitions. You get spooked. Linda Blair. Oh, Linda Blair's your good friend. Yeah, that movie was bananas. The Exorcist is a classic. William Friedkin film, of course, who also did To Live and Die in LA. But, whoo, that's all I'm saying. But that being said, once something is in your head, you can't get it out. It's like a worm in an apple. So I remember being on the radio in Indianapolis in 2004, decrying, going against reality television, saying it is a guilty pleasure, and I accept that. But just like the term implies, guilty pleasure, whether it's sugar, which I adore, whatever it is, I would say, and I remember the words precisely, I said, pull yourself from the nipple of junk TV. If you're going to watch The Bachelor, then don't watch Survivor. Like, don't watch all of it. Pick and choose your guilty pleasures. And my boss, David Edgar, I'll say his name because he would back me up on this. And he would probably say, that girl was pretty smart and ahead of her time. We had saloon doors in the studio because we had a sort of an ante room with a recording area where we could do pre-records. And then there was our studio, which was the live studio. It literally had saloon doors. And during the first break of that show, when I went on my rant, he came through the saloon doors like it was like the Old West, like Dodge, and we were going to have it out. He said, you can't talk like that on the air. You can't talk like that. People love those shows. You're making them feel bad about what they like. You're making them feel guilty. You're making them feel, judged. And I shrugged and I said, good. What part of that conversation did you not understand that was my intention? What part? Because as I said, having lived in LA before I went to do radio in Indianapolis, a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I still adore David Edgar, for the record. I lived in LA in the 90s and I saw the rise of reality television. The first one, I think the first really big one was Survivor. And I knew that they're highly produced. I have friends that work on these shows. They're all incredibly highly, like a Swiss watch, produced. There's nothing real about reality television. There isn't. There's people 20 feet away with cameras from the naked people on Naked and Afraid. Duh, who's filming it? You know how you can tell a sex tape is a real sex tape? Because it doesn't move. It's on a tripod. If you have production values and you're following the wiener as opposed to the leader, hello, then you know someone else is in the room or it's been planned. So, the reality television is anything but. And my concern at that time was that there would be a blurring of the lines. See, I love fantasy. I love fantasy better than anybody. In my 50s, I am an annual pass holder to Disney and Universal Studios. I let Disney lapse last year because I was a little mad, but it'll come back. We're going to be posting some footage of my New Year's Eve shows. I was wearing Mickey Mouse ears. for New Year's. I didn't want to wear a pointy New Year's Eve hat. I wasn't feeling it. So I wore my green sequin Mickey Mouse ears, green for money, for manifesting abundance. See, that's where the superstition and the fantasy side by side. So, knowing full well that reality television isn't real at all, there's nothing unscripted or spontaneous about it, except when it goes awry. And now we're finding out everybody was all Me Too and herpied up. Yeah. But that being said, I knew there would be a blurring of the lines, because as a child, I loved going to Disney, being smart enough to know where the line blurred and being able to watch the blur. If you've never taken about a 4 or 5-year-old to Disney World or Disneyland, you are missing out, because there's a blurring of the lines. They still see the fantastical in the Magic Kingdom. It is indeed magic to them in a way that it'll never be to you when you're a certain age. There used to be a ride in Walt Disney World in the 70s. It's not there anymore. It was a theater called like Mickey Mouse Review, and it was a history of Disney. And then at the end, Mickey Mouse would come out and he would conduct, this whole thing like the Sorcerer's Apprentice. One of my fondest memories of Disney was a little girl, while Mickey was conducting, who broke up everybody in the studio, in the theater, by saying, "I'm here, Mickey. I'm right behind you. I came to see you." With the sincerity of a 4-year-old, with the heartbreaking sincerity of a blurred line fantasy 4-year-old. But my fear was that, as reality television gripped hold, and I literally referred to it as the dummying down of America. You didn't have to follow a plot line. You didn't have to follow snappy dialogue. And I saw this divide begin. There's always going to be urbane, erudite, well-spoken, intelligent, linear communicators, articulate, whatever words you want to use. There's always going to be people that want and seek more. And that has nothing to do with socioeconomics. There's plenty of people that come from humble backgrounds, poverty, in fact, that have decided that they want a different life than the life that they were born into or raised in. I always say, I just had this conversation yesterday with a fabulous friend that I've known since junior year of high school in Miami. And we talked about how every family has the runner. And that is the person in the family that is not necessarily the smartest, the best educated, or even the best looking. They are the most courageous. They are the bravest. They are the person who wants to go further than anyone else in the family has ever gone. They want different. They want better. They want better for themselves and their future and their families. And they're the runner. And museums and Nobel Prize halls and, just keep going down the line of goodness are filled with runners. But so are insane asylums, the ones that exist somewhere. I don't know that we even have those anymore, psych wards. But so are psych wards and prisons, because runners live in a bizarre polarity. They live in this weird conundrum. Go away closer, pull it out deeper. It's that, look at Joe, he went to America. Screw Joe, who does he think he is that he can't stay here in the village with us? They're usually admired and respected, but sometimes they're not loved or liked. Sometimes they're the person that the whole family talks smack about until you show up at Christmas, and then everyone's excited to see you. And runners attract runners. And I am absolutely convinced that the reason why I don't have huge social media numbers is because I'm not attractive to lots and lots and lots of people, because I don't think or act like they do. I think that the people that are drawn to me, and in radio we call it time spent listening versus, being a P1, which back in the day literally meant your preset button. A P1 meant that button number 1 was your radio station. P1s, that's who you want in radio. And I know who my P1s are. I've interacted with them. I know who my time spent listening people. I know that I'm not flavor of the month. I know that they've followed my career sometimes for decades. Most certainly for a few years. Some of them since KFI, some of them since Latin Divas. But those of you that are my people, my real people, who I adore, are absolutely most likely the runners of their family. That's just the way it is. Because you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't like it. You wouldn't love it if it didn't resonate with you. If you hadn't had that experience. If you hadn't lived within that conundrum of people asking you for help when they continue to do the same things over and over. And you want to tell them that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. But there's a part of you that knows that then you're the insane one that's repeating it. Because it's not that they don't want different, better, more. It's that they don't see their way clearly to it the same way that you do. I'm going to ask producer Stanton to give me a thumbs up if the chat is pretty lively on this and if it's resonating, because we're going through StreamYard, so I only see intermittent comments. But producer Stanton is giving me a thumbs up. See, producer Stanton is the runner. He's the runner. He's the guy that worships at the altar of Elon Musk and has been singing his praises since the day I met him. And I met him through friends that met him at a Tesla supercharger. And now, as we learned this week, who is the richest man on the planet? Who beat Jeff Bezos? Well, my friend, if you read his bio, it would say South African-born American businessman Elon Musk, because I looked it up when it happened. Because another thing that I started talking about years ago that irritated my bosses on the radio was that I don't just do any story that anybody puts in front of me. It has to be vetted. It can't just come from Drudge or, back in the day, if it wasn't off the AP wire, and now people go, you can't even trust the AP wire or Reuters. Well, who can you trust? Who is vetted? There's every time I see something, I ask people that send me, because believe me, I was inundated with information this week. Is it vetted? Is that a true thing that really happened? Now, I'm going to address something briefly, because you didn't come to me for that. That's not who I am in your life. I know that. So here's what I've got to say about the events. Elon was the runner in his family. Yes, producer Stanton, I am most certain that he was. So, and he's a risk taker. He is not risk averse, which is another sign of a runner. People that are willing to, it's like the poem If you can put everything on a game of pitch and toss, if you're willing to take big risks, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. That's just, I knew that when I quit my day job and virtually cut my income by 80% to become a road comic. But when the things were happening on Tuesday, let me give you a flashback to my old job. When I was on the radio in Indianapolis was when we had the photos from Abu Ghraib. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that properly, Abu Ghraib prison. And we had that young lady that had the leash around the prisoner. Like, I don't want to even recount that because, again, I don't allow a lot of negativity into my consciousness, which being, a quasi-journalist talk show hostess on the most respected talk radio station in the Western United States, of course, I saw my fair share of things. And they were vetted and they were harsh. I was very much involved in the Gabriel case, as many of you will recall. And it doesn't get any uglier than that. I assure you, it does not get any uglier than Gabriel. I haven't even watched the documentary because I know that it will not be good for me. It won't. And for the record, I had a conversation with a dear friend. I have never seen The Color Purple. I've never seen Schindler's List because I know myself. I will most likely watch Schindler's List soon because my friend promised me that it wouldn't decimate me and make me cry for hours. Yes, thank you. Somebody else posted Walt Disney was the runner. He actually was. Walt Disney was absolutely the runner. And sometimes you can be a second generation runner or even a third generation runner. Because sometimes runners, although they know it's hard, they still want their children to take up the torch, to grab the baton, to keep moving. Sometimes people fall short of the finish line in their own run and are hopeful that their children will continue the run. So actually, a little sidebar of Disney before we go back to Abu Ghraib. Interestingly enough, Walt Disney was very much inspired by the fact that his father worked on the Chicago World's Fair. A lot of the inspiration for Main Street USA and the architecture of Disneyland comes from remembrances of his childhood when his father worked on the World's Fair, where in fact the Ferris wheel was invented to compete with the Eiffel Tower. You know, the Eiffel Tower had been in the previous World's Fair. And for the record, it was never supposed to stay. The Eiffel Tower was not supposed to be a permanent structure. One of the most iconic photographed important structures on Earth was built for a World's Fair. And the Ferris wheel was invented. A giant Ferris wheel was debuted at the World's Fair. And the World's Fairs, when they had them, there was the 1965 World's Fair in New York, and anybody who saw Men in Black, those two towers are from the 1965 World's Fair. I don't know when they stopped having World's Fairs, but I'm pretty sure they kind of stopped being important. Maybe 1965 there was sort of a fantastical, It's a Small World was seen in the 1965 World's Fair. And it had been seen before that. So It's a Small World made its debut at a World's Fair before it was brought to Disneyland. So there you have it. Oh, look at that. Man, producer Stanton is all over it. So going back to Abu Ghraib, all I did on the radio in Indianapolis was ask my listeners, when you see these photographs, how do you feel? Now, I didn't ask anybody anything, statistical, logical, quantifiable, codifiable. I asked them a very simple question. How do you feel? And with just that, it turned into great, what my bosses thought was fabulous radio. Me personally, I was extremely upset at the fact that listeners were taking digs at other listeners and saying, yeah, but this is worse than what they do to us. Yeah, but that's not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing how I actually felt. Well, an eye for an eye. Like, it got ugly. It got ugly. My bosses were delighted because conflict and the phones lit up and people going bananas is good radio. Just like it's good television. Nobody wants to watch peace, joy, happiness, positivity. I would be 10 times more famous if I screamed bloody murder in a bikini. But it's not going to happen. I'm not designed that way. It's okay. I'll take my people. I don't need everybody. I just want the right people. So, that being said, I was flattered and somewhat honored at how many people reached out to me publicly and privately to see how I felt about the shenanigans. I'm just going to say one funny thing. One. That's it. And here it is. As they were posting all of the pictures on social media to see, who the people were, and et cetera, and who, everyone. Let's just put it that way. As more and more individual shots were being posted and more pictures of the event where you could see people clearly, I took a deep sigh of relief that none of the perpetrators were somebody that I dated, slept with, or married. That's the only funny thing I'm going to say, because I have been involved with a variety of men. And evidently, because there's something sort of wild about me that people always think they need to, help me rein it in, believe it or not, I have been involved with people who were actually politically extremely conservative. I've only had 3 husbands and one of them's dead, so you do the math. One of the 2 living husbands watched Fox News pretty much from, I don't know when it started with Cavuto, or like early evening, way past, I remember the end of Bill O'Reilly, where he'd always do that curly cue at the end of his, and then, he would say, "What say you?" Or if you have a pithy comment, and Greta Von Susteren, and, following the disappearance of that Natalie, whatever, who disappeared and wherever. And I'm not saying that to be callous, just I never paid very close attention. But I know there was a young lady that disappeared somewhere in an island, which is a Dutch island, because it was a Joran van something who was alleged to have killed her, who probably very much definitely killed her. And then he killed somebody else years later while she was Google searching who he killed. And I remember thinking that her mother must feel awful, because I've got nieces. They were little girls then, babies, in fact. But if you let a child go someplace on a school trip because the drinking age is 18 and they're going with their friends and they're young, people don't make great choices when they're young on a school trip with a bunch of friends. Parents, FYI, if you're watching. Like when I was in high school, when I was in junior high, the big trip was that we went to Disney World for an overnight and they kept the park open for us. And I got news for you. A lot of people did a lot of stupid stuff on that trip. And we were just kids. Like, I remember that one of our chaperones was the chorus teacher's son, who was smoking hot. And I'm pretty sure he got action. In fact, I'm not naming any names, but yeah. And he was the chaperone. And we were in America, in Disney World. So, I'm sure I don't need to say anything to heap anything on anybody's misery. But if they had to do it over again, I'm guessing that Natalie's mom would not let her go to that island to, run into Joran. I'm pretty sure. But I remember that was on Greta Von Susteren for months. They were trying to figure out where that girl went. Well, all they had to do was ask me, to a bad place where you're never going to find her again. End of Greta Von Susteren. So that being said, when I saw the melee and saw stills of the melee, all I could say was, thank God the guy in the horns was not an ex-boyfriend. Because it's quite the rogues gallery, but they usually turn up when people come out of the closet as gay. And that's usually an ex-boyfriend of mine. So, that's how that goes. But the upshot is that I don't want to dwell on what happened, because it happened. No different than I want to dwell on 9/11 or the plane crashing into the Pentagon. There was a loss of life, which is why that's the only mildly amusing comment I'm going to make. There were people lost, and one of them was a policeman, which is the unfunniest thing in the world to me. And I was very clear last summer, when there was other unrest and violent activities, that I don't stand behind defund the police. What the hell does that mean? I understand that there's corruption everywhere. But I'm here to tell you, my friends, I don't want to live in Los Angeles without the LAPD. No, thank you. No, thank you. As corrupt and violent and racist as some of them may be, and not all of them, and not the majority. Let's work on it a piece at a time. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. And I was monumentally saddened. And I knew immediately by the news report of the way that he died that it had to have been some form of blunt force trauma that took effect later, or he would have died on the spot. He wouldn't have gone back to his precinct and then died. See, when you pay attention to details, you know, anybody who very much understands the nature of the human body and the human spirit knows when one will leave the other, and most likely how. And I don't have his name in front of me, and I have notes on my phone, but one thing I did read about him was that he had voted for Trump, the policeman, and that he was a lovely, respectful person who daily greeted Democratic, I couldn't remember if the lady was a senator or a representative, but he greeted her daily as he protected her, as you do when you're a policeman in the Capitol, working around the White House, and that they had very civil, polite, friendly conversations about how different they were in ideology, and yet they were friends. She actually spoke out immediately, which is where I got the story of what a nice person he was. The vast majority of Americans are not people that sanction or approve of or think that any type of violence or loss of life on our shores or anybody else's is acceptable. That's not who we are. It's not who we've ever been. And I'm certain that part of the reason that people are making these jokes and sending around memes and, you know, we're the village people and we're here to do a concert for Antifa, whatever. Believe me, I've received it all. I have hundreds of comedian friends. And I have not responded with, that's funny, or ha ha. I haven't responded. They realized, don't send her anymore. Because there was nothing other than the costumes individually, if you separate them out. Yeah, why would you dress like that? Okay, whatever. I'm not here to talk about that individual fashion choices, whether it's the zip tie guy or the grandma or the Chewbacca. There's nothing comical about it in my eyes. And if I don't think it's funny, boys and girls, it's not funny. That's my job, is to find the funny. I want to be respectful. In fact, I remember going back to my radio days in Indianapolis that I got in trouble, well deserved, because I was reading. We used to get these radio prep service, which you don't even do anymore because it's all online. But they would print up this prep service. And one of the stories was about a woman who died because she'd been smacked to death by her washing machine, because she planned to take her sweater off that she was wearing and put it in the washer. You know how sometimes you just take your clothes off if you're alone and throw them in the wash machine? Well, the sweater got stuck on her head, and then it got wrapped into the washing machine that was already going, and it pulled her down. And I don't know why or how she couldn't take her sweater off fast enough, or if it hit her, or like an elevator door closing on you. I don't know what happened, but she literally died by being smacked to death by her washing machine. And as I was reading it as a piece of sort of news of the weird, there was a little bit of a lilt and a slight giggle in my voice, because it was absurd to me. It was funny. It was funny, not in a ha-ha way, but just like, wow, that's a shitty way to go. You know, the old, he died doing what he loved. Because there was actually a couple I reported on that died because they were having sex. The woman was sitting on the man's lap facing the opposite direction. I don't want to, I mean, you can figure it out. It wasn't, you know, a road BJ. It was actual full-on sex. driving in like the backwoods of where they thought they were nowhere. And evidently they hit a rock or went in a ditch. Something happened and they died. Now, if that's not the definition of dying, doing something you love, I don't know what is. But that, even that, I was mindful because I'd already been scolded once, saying, you know, that's disrespectful. If you're going to do news of the weird and report deaths that happen in an unusual way, try not to have a lilt in your voice. Although I have to say, I think the couple that died humping in their car, they don't care. They would think that was, if they were going to haunt me, they would be like, we don't care that you laughed, Monique. It's okay. We were laughing when it happened. Like irony of like, oh yeah, we're going to die. But what a way to go. So that being said, you know, to me, once there's loss of life, done. Not funny anymore. Done. End of story. Sacrosanct. Leave it alone. Move on. And that's what we at Talk of Our Times, that's what me and producer Stanton and the rest of the runners are going to do. We're going to move on. Because in my mind, I refuse to let 2021 dip any lower than 2020. I just refuse. We're off to a rocky start, but we can salvage this. It's the first week. It's a mulligan. It's a drop in the grass. And the less energy you give something, less oxygen, the less hot air, the less wind you give a fire, the faster it goes out. So that's my opinion. That's all you're going to get out of me. That's all I want to discuss. So now we can move on to what I think will be funnier, nicer things. Other than the fact that, again, I'm not even slightly exaggerating when I tell you that I was pleased as punch that I didn't know anybody in any of the pictures, and especially having spent a lot of time in San Diego, which is a conservative place. You know, it's some things are not a coincidence. Okay, so this is what I want to address as we go forward as a country, as a, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Every single one of you has people in your family that are on the margins. You know, that when that separation came, that of people that, you know, I forget the show. I would only watch it on cruise ships because cruise ships buy old episodes of TV shows because it's cheaper than bringing in satellite television. So if you've ever taken a cruise, you know this is true, that you get weird television shows from all over the world. But that's where I found Call the Midwife, which I love, and where I guess the show's called My Name is Earl. And it's about a guy who has some sort of karmic list of things he has to fix. And I only saw it intermittently on cruises. But My Name is Earl is a guilty pleasure. First of all, it's incredibly funny. And it's wrong and gross in all the best possible ways. So if you have people, let's just call them Earls, so we don't have to give them a mean name. Earl lives with his brother in a disgusting trailer because he's divorced and he's still friendly with his ex-wife who's remarried. The whole show is a shit show, but it is very funny. And all of us have Earls in our family. Everybody's got people that just somehow, you know, they didn't realize that you could unplug the mechanical horse in front of the Kmart and that they didn't just have to be dragged by their heels in the stirrup. And, you know, it's the oldest joke in the world was, you know, the horse ran away and I thought I was going to die. And then somebody reached down and unplugged it. I remember hearing that like in the 90s in a comedy club from a comedian who I looked at him and said, isn't that like a street joke that you retread? And what I'm asking you to do, since you're the runners, since you're the you know, the ones that are trying to make a difference, reach back to an Earl this week. I'm giving you homework. I give the 330s homework all the time. But now my bigger family of runners on YouTube, If you have somebody in your family that's on the margins, you know who these people are. They're people that eat macaroni and cheese 5 nights a week, not because they're broke, but because they really, really like it and really don't like much else. If you have people in your family that are marginalized, they feel left behind, not respected, that they've been treated unfairly, even though I know that A, they probably don't deserve it, B, you're a good person and you didn't even do anything to them. Like, this isn't about making up or making amends or even doing any form of good Samaritanness. It's an experiment. And here's my hypothesis, because I live a great life. I do. And it's getting better. It's actually getting even more wonderful, if you can believe that, which is why I don't want anything to interrupt it for me or for you. Is that I figured out how it works. That when you do something for no reason at all, just because, when you just take the time to reach out to that person who has terrible grammar or bad table manners or drinks a little too much, or I mean, I'm not even going to be specific, just so nobody goes, is she talking about me? I'm not. But whoever that person is, it's just a burr in your saddle blanket for a very good reason. I'm not describing you, lucky bastard. That person that inappropriately texts or puts curse words in a group chat when you're like, that's not appropriate. I didn't want to read a group chat and hit that word. That person, if you can find it in your heart or in your higher vibration, in your runnerhood, to reach back, slow down, try and see if they can grab the baton. Even if it's just like, happy belated New Year. I hope you're well. How's lockdown treating you? I just remembered something good that happened when we were kids and it made me think of you. I heard this song. I saw that. Whatever it is. A 2-sentence text, a 1-sentence message. Emojis don't count. It has to be words. Use your words. I'm asking you to reach back to somebody that you rightfully left behind in your run. This isn't a right or a wrong. This isn't a good or a bad. I'm a firm believer that there's dividends. Now, producer Stanton's, don't inundate him with messages, but producer Stanton's a pretty smart guy about a lot of things. And he's always giving me advice. He's always saying, when you've got a few extra dollars, give them to me. I'll invest them in this and that. And he's right. And he's smart. So he's good at the cash. And I believe that when you're in alignment and the currency is right, and you expand your currency, which is why they always say, you know, what's the currency of the country? Because when you build up currency, good energy, good vibes, you're in alignment, the cash is inevitable. The cash is going to come. Do I have a ton of money? No. Do I have any coming in? Not really. Am I concerned? No, because I got a bunch of currency. I got a lot of deposits in the Karma Bank. And I'm pretty sure most of you do too. I know Monica does, that's for sure. I know Hector Baez does. I know Rob Tween does. I could just keep naming names. I know who you are. One of the reasons that celebrity bothers me, I always talk about being a star. And I've been a star since I was a child, because a star is an illuminating body. I've always wanted to shine brightly. I've always wanted to get good grades. I've always wanted to uplift others. I've always wanted to help others and be of service. I've always had a life of faith. A star is an illuminating body. It has nothing to do with ego or celebrity or getting a good table at a restaurant. That's celebrity. There's a difference between stardom and celebrity. I love being a star. I love being the person that people are excited about when I get to a party. That has nothing to do with me being a comedian. I've been that way since I was in junior high and high school. People would be excited when I got to the party. Monique's here. And it made me feel good. And that was a wonderful karma that I nurtured and grew like a flower in a garden. It's not accidental. You are all stars. Just like Moby says, we're all made of stars. And by the way, as much as I love Eminem, it was very nasty of him to take a dig at Moby. Moby didn't do anything to him, and Moby is a very talented man. There, I said it. And I don't care if Marshall gets upset with me. However, with celebrity, and I just talked to a friend of mine who is a celebrity. He said, Monique, it will get to the point where you have to let go. You have to surrender. You're not going to be able to answer your DMs, and you're just going to have to not feel guilty about it. You're not going to be able to respond to every message. You just can't. And I think I have felt conflicted because there's a number where you can know who those people are. I have a very good memory, and I know who a lot of people are. When I see your pictures, I know you. And that's exciting to me. And I know there's going to come a time where there's a lot of people that know me that I don't know and will never have any contact with. And it's probably already happening to some degree. I don't think about it. But what I will tell you is that the ones of you that I have crossed paths with in a comedy club 20 years ago or at a shopping mall 2 weeks ago, the ones of you that I have crossed paths with will understand, thoroughly understand, that I believe with all of my heart that for every good thing you do, you get back 10. And maybe not from the direction. Maybe people have disappointed you and let you down because you gave them something and they not only didn't give it back, you ended up with a nice, good kick in the tuchus, which is where people say no good deed goes unpunished. Well, that's incredibly cynical and mean-spirited. Why don't we just leave that behind? Let's leave that in last week. Let's just cut off last week and put it back in 2020 and start fresh. Can I get a witness? Can people just say, let's start it now? Today? With here? This is our party? Because sometimes when you least expect it, somebody will do something incredibly nice for you that you've never done anything for. And just maybe that's just a dividend. Maybe that was a good investment repaid from a stock you didn't know. See, it doesn't have to work linear or one-on-one. That's the difference between cash and currency. Energy is everywhere, like electricity. Cash lives in very specific places. Banks, your pocketbook, your wallet, in my grandmother's case, in the Lilt home permanent boxes or under the mattress. I hope that even though this show wasn't a laugh riot, that it was the appropriate show, because I've had a lot on my mind and I really didn't know how to get my arms around it. I struggled with what I was going to say to you tonight. In fact, I kept kind of thinking to myself, I don't really want to do a show because you can't not address this week. It wouldn't be right. But then again, I knew that I had to address it sort of my way, which is why you're here and not somewhere else. I have to respect the amount of time and attention that you've given me by sitting through so many of my shows and sending me so many wonderful messages. And I don't like to use the term brand. Joan of Arc was not a brand. Picasso's not a brand. They're people, they're personalities. They have a mindset. They have an iconic or iconoclastic way of living that is very recognizable. I'm not a brand, but my mindset to anyone who knows me is highly recognizable. Producer Stanton and I have had several heated discussions because as much as we adore each other, I had a different mindset of how to build this page. I didn't want to put the more prurient comedy bits on here until I had built up the right following in the right way. And then I can say, hey, here's some throwback material from a grittier, saucier, sassier, nastier time. And now that you know me like this, We'll put something, producer Stanton and we have some stuff up our sleeve for 2021. Trust me, some old Monique footage is coming to YouTube. And some of you are going to be like, clutch pearls. You said that? Yes, I did. Some of it on TV. But I knew how I wanted. You can't make a second first impression. And I knew that if we were building a YouTube channel, I want you to know me like this before you know me like that. And here we are, once again, simpatico, completely in love with the way we're doing our work together as a team. All I can tell you is on some level, you have to feel confident that you know what you're doing, what your brand is, what your mind is, what your own stardom, what your own genius is. I guarantee you that you have it. I promise you. My mother and I have been binge watching The Crown, and we've been talking about, we have a little bit of a different mindset, and that I don't feel sorry for Princess Margaret. I don't feel sorry for Prince Philip because they live in the shadow of the Queen. That's their choice. They weren't designed to be queen. It wasn't their destiny to be queen. They were destined to be other great things. Don't waste your time thinking about what you're not. I could lie to you, but you guys love me. So would I like to be organically thin? Yes. Am I? No. Every time I get a compliment about what a lovely figure I have or how nice I look, if you knew the hours, the calorie counting, the everything that I've done to not look like a Korean man in drag, a fat Korean man in drag, you wouldn't believe it. It's been an Olympic fucking sport. There, I dropped the F-bomb for the first time. But yes, you can have your own genius. That's why my special is called Not Skinny, Not Blonde, because when I figured out how to not worry about what I wasn't and start really enjoying what I was, my life got pretty magical. I am funny. I know that. I am relatively bright. I know that. I have good intentions. I know that. And I genuinely, with everything in my being, want you to know what your genius is, what your destiny is, where you're running, or at the very least that you're running to a good place, and that you have enough that you can be kind and move forward, and that you have enough that you can reach back and give somebody else something good. Even if it's just 2 sentences on Messenger, I know you can do it. And it's going to come back to you tenfold anyway. I'm not an altruistic person. Every nice thing I've ever done in my life, now that I know the way it works, I go around looking for nice things I can do. I do. And this is probably my nicest hour of the week. This is my favorite time. I can't even thank you enough for giving me your time, your attention, your love, your support. I cannot thank you enough for giving me a place to say the things that are in my heart. That being said, our time is up. So until next Saturday night or tomorrow at 3:30, and producer Stanton and I and sound guy Tony's coming on Tuesday, we are going to expand this. I've been promising it, but I need help. You guys know my shortcomings with the technology. But I have help. See, that's the karma. That's the karma. And by the way, thank you guys for for being there for producer Stanton. I'm going to ask you one more favor. I love that you supported him in condolences for his uncle, his beloved uncle. I know him as Uncle Dubby, but I'm sure that's not his name on his birth certificate. Rest in peace, Uncle Dubby. For the record, producer Stanton has not charged me $1. Not $1. In fact, he's brought me coffee to help me build this YouTube station. If that isn't currency, if that isn't karma, if that isn't return on any investment of anything good, I don't know what is. So until next week, count your blessings truly of where the currency is, because there's cash right behind it. Love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The people don't sing and dance anymore. They need to see who you really are.